Hello and good evening, everybody. Got a fantastic conversation coming up. We're continuing our conversation from last week. For those of you who weren't tuned in, I recommend going back and checking that out. We were talking about how software has turned from a purchase to a subscription. And has that made life better or is it not as better? Or do we have to be better because we're told it's better? Not sure. But we've got a fantastic crew with us. We've got Mike, who's a technology facilitator for us. Go ahead,
Hey
Mike.
everybody, good to see you tonight. And we've also got Jackson, who's a student and junior technology facilitator, always comes to us with a lot of questions.
Oh,
Yep,
yeah.
nice to be here with you guys. I'm a bit of a wild card around here, but yeah, I love to be a part of this. And I think we've got Artie, our flight director, here with us as well.
Good evening, everybody. I am Artie. I am running things behind the curtains. Think of me as the Wizard of Oz, but better looking.
Pay no attention to the man behind the mask and the computer screen. He is in control of your TV sets, which is awesome because he's going to make sure that we come through live, loud, and clear. And yeah. So, where were we last week? We talked about I used to own Photoshop. Now I've got to pay for the Adobe subscription. We used to also own video games, but now that's turned into a subscription. Unless you're on Steam, you can buy it out and stuff like
Um,
that. So,
not on
yeah, we
Steam.
got kind of. What's that?
Not on Steam. You buy a license to run it on their platform because of DRM.
Yep.
Good Old Games is the only platform that I know of where you actually can download the installer after you buy it, so that you've actually got a copy of the game.
Good old GOG. That's right. Spell that out. Good old games.
I've never even heard of them.
Oh, it's
I'm,
fantastic.
I'm gonna have to go check
Check
them
it
out.
out.
It's
You can get
run
all
by
the old
CD
titles.
Projekt Red. They're the ones that developed the
Um,
Witcher games and Cyberpunk 2077.
It's not all the
yeah.
games, but there's some really good titles up there still. But yeah,
Oh,
it's interesting back in the day. You on the site now?
well, yeah, I looked them up, and I'm used to. I mean, I've seen the GOG. I wasn't making that connection, but yeah, okay, that's super cool.
Yep. Yeah, so it's a different world. We went from owning software to licensing software. Did we ever own software? Now we're in a subscription model, so you pay a monthly fee for continued enhancements and improvements.
Or kind of like what we were talking about, uh, disimprove. No, how do you say that? Not a disimprovement. Somebody
Impairment.
help me out. An impair. Yeah, I mean, there now it's you just get what you get. Kind of like we were talking with Outlook. You now get the new Outlook, and like me, I mean, I don't do a ton with my Outlook. Just read emails and respond. Um, but like you guys were saying, a lot of that functionality has been taken away, and so that to me is the biggest thing is like you don't get to choose what you have anymore. I mean, if you decided, okay, I want the Outlook with these features, too bad.
Yeah, you can't export PSTs in the new Outlook, but do you need to export a PST?
Somebody does.
Average, does the average home user need to do that?
Probably never. I myself don't even know what a PST is for, but
If
I'm
if
sure if it
it's
exists,
if
it's got a
it's
purpose.
that's just it. If they're taking their email account with them to a new computer or something like that, why do they need to do that? I don't know. The only thing I see the need for is if maybe the email account's been compromised somehow. Maybe it's just on a lot of spam lists and they just can't get rid of all the spam. They want to start fresh with a new email address, but they need to back up, historical archives.
Mm-hmm.
That's about the only use case I can really see where. Oh, and of course, the odd instance where maybe something becomes corrupted with the account and you have to, do a backup and start over and import. I don't know.
I actually had that happen this week. I was
Hmm.
working with a client, and the Outlook client stopped working with the 365 server, and the only fix was to delete the profile, start a new one.
Hmm.
Everything siphoned in from 365, so she was up and running basically 20 minutes after the phone call started. Kind of cool. But all those old tricks don't work on the new software.
Mm.
And I think the other thing that does is they're also forcing you now into a cloud system. And we all know that cloud storage isn't free, so that's another price tag that they're, lumping on there with it, and you don't even necessarily realize.
Oh no, it's free.
As long as you've got Recall installed, it's free. Or
It's
not
included
Recall,
in the
Copilot.
Jackson. It's included in the cost.
Right. It's included in the cost, so therefore it is free.
Right. It's all about marketing.
Free, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk.
Exactly.
I always love the phrase, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we say that so often, we almost need to make it like our motto of this podcast.
No. No. We subsidize this one with our time and effort and helping out. We are absolutely available to consult with anybody on any tech needs that they might have. So if you have any questions, I mean, the contact information is on our webpage. But yeah, you too could talk to a celebrity on the internet.
In probably G-list celebrity at this point.
Gee, I mean, we're in the alphabet with single digit. That'd be like Excel, where they're like, we're all the way down to like ZX and ZY.
It reminds me of Charlie Brown. Peppermint Patty was so terrible at school that she'd just get terrible grades. And there's one strip I remember reading where she gets her report card and she's jumping for joy and telling her friend Marcy, Marcy, I got an N. I got an N. And Marcy looks at it like, you've got the report card turned sideways, sir. That's a Z.
It's a letter grade.
Yeah.
Not the best, but it's a letter grade. So I think the biggest question I want to get into is, does the software subscription, we kind of touched on this last time, does software subscription make our lives better, make our lives worse? Who does it help? Now, I want to take on a kind of a devil's advocate. I'll play the part of the corporate apologist, if you will. If Jackson, you said you had a number of questions on why would you do this? How is this beneficial? Who does this help? Hit me.
Well, and I think last time we talked about this too, where I kind of said like I could see how it's a little bit mutually beneficial. Say me as the buyer, what's in it for me is, okay, I know that you guys are constantly working on it and I'll get whatever software updates you bring me. But what if I don't need those? That's kind of the whole thing. What if I'm happy with my product and I just want to buy it outright?
It's a great question. And probably the easiest way of saying that is people always look to the corporations for a solution or a fix, or you should have seen these vulnerabilities before hackers did. You should have fixed my problem before I had the problem. Well, we can't do that if you have legacy software. If your install of a video game is 2 years old and somehow you got hacked through some obscure Java reference inside the thing. True story, by the way. That's not something we can prevent if you're not up to date with security and performance and all the things we know about and all the things we fixed. So if you're
So
running
you're
old software,
saying
that's not my problem because you've chosen to stay on an old legacy system.
Yeah, that's a good point actually, because security is a big part of any piece of software. And I don't even know if there are any pieces of software that aren't in some way a security risk or have to at least uh, have some sort of a thought towards security. Because I mean, we've seen it. Obviously, there are exploits in everything. So you're saying, as a company who provides my software, you won't take the blame if I refuse to pay for the subscription and therefore get the updates.
Oh no, we'll still dodge the blame. We'll find some way of getting out of that.
Nah. Remember in the
So
license it says use at your own risk. So
Yep.
so does that then encourage a software developer to make kind of subpar code? Like they no longer
Well,
have to have a pinnacle of a product if they know like, oh well, we could just update it in a month.
so I'll flip that around and say there's a difference between it works and it works elegantly. Having a piece of software work 100% reliably all the time, that's the goal. Does it have to be the most efficient code? Does it have to be the most effective use of space? Does it have to function well on the screen? Maybe, maybe not. But we got you the latest updates, got you the latest features.
You kind of remind me of something with that. So there are some games that there's a hidden room somewhere, and inside that room there's this random object, like say it's a potted plant just sitting there, and the game is something like Doom, where that would not actually fit there. And users find ways to clip through the walls and see this, and it's just like, well, why is this here? And then when it finally gets back to the devs, it's like, every time we removed it, the game stopped working, so we just left it there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a meme I love. Yeah, I'm taking off the corporate evil overlord hat for a second. There's this programming just sitting there staring at a screen, just the program's not working. Why? And the next frame, the program's working. Why?
yeah.
Yep, run into that many a
You know,
times.
the other thing too is that going along with that, you say that it works or it works elegantly, and I think to some extent it could be um maybe if they look at their market share. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Adobe is the de facto standard for graphic design software. At least it has been for the last what 30 years maybe.
Yep.
And so there's no competition except themselves, right? So as long as nobody else is doing it better than them, what does it matter? Let's push it out and get the release out, and then we'll fix it as we go. I think if there was an issue of that there was more competition in certain areas, that it would be more of we have to make this work and we have to make it work well. Company XYZ over here, they have it working, but it doesn't work as well as it could. We can do better than that. And that's where we can make our selling point, to get more people to buy the software.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always think back, it's like it's got to be a numbers game of what's making the money. And if they really did something that they wouldn't want to do anything that would absolutely turn off the users from using the program completely. If it just absolutely worked like garbage, then nobody's going to use it no matter what your name is. Okay? There's been lots of companies that were big name companies that ended up getting bought out or whatever, or just shut down because something better came along and they couldn't compete.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the way you can look at that is, well, let's get back to elegant code for a second.
Mhm.
If you've got a program written in C++, C Sharp, .NET, Pascal, Rust, I can name off a dozen programming languages. Which one's the right one? Assembler? I mean,
Well, it
like,
all ends up machine code. I mean, in some way
It
or
does.
another, unless it's scripted, but it's in some sort of compiled code, we would hope.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, you and I, we were talking. Mario Brothers was written in 16K. And that was 8 levels or 8 worlds and 3 levels per world, and
Or
that was awesome. I mean, there
Or
hours of entertainment
yeah,
there.
yeah. My
But
son
still one of the
still,
hardest video games out there.
yeah.
yeah, I heard a just a side note real quick. I heard that somebody figures that that first Goomba is the most effective villain ever in any video game because it's killed Mario more than any other video game villain has killed the main character.
That's funny.
But if I'm writing code and I've got to sell it out to the world, I'm going to write it in the most expeditious way. I'm going to send it out in the most efficient way possible, reduce my cost so I can maximize the return coming back. I've got a board, I've got investors, I got people, I got to feed, I got to take care of things. Why would I spend extra time to do it really well if I can just get it done good enough and out the door?
It's kind of like, the story of the two guys camping in the forest and being chased by the bear. And it's not the fact that you have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun the other guy.
Or kick him in the leg real hard.
Something, yeah. And yeah, I mean, there is a point where it's good enough or perfectly done. Well, nobody's going to get to perfect, so it's got to be at some point you have to draw a line and say it's got to be good enough so you can move on to other stuff.
That's
Yep.
actually become a problem, at least in the gaming industry and in parts of the software industry, is they're not releasing something that is good enough.
Mm,
They release something and they're going to update it later and guarantee. I mean, Steam recently had to change their terms of service for games that are being put on their platform because you had companies that said, "Yeah, sign up for this like year pass, and you'll get all the updates for this year pass," and they don't release any update dates. It's just somebody pays $120, $200 for a game because they want to have all the updates without having to pay for them individually later.
that's
And
almost
they
like
never come.
vaporware.
And
So
that's the problem is, there's an expectation of performance. There's an expectation that the product I'm paying a subscription for or continued updates, that those updates be meaningful to me. Okay, back to me being the evil corporate overlord guy. You will get those updates, but we'll make sure that those updates are meaningful to you. Now, how do we know it's meaningful to you? Jackson, how do I know what you want?
You don't.
Focus groups.
You think they really
do
do
they
that
still
though?
do those?
No, they do virtual. They see what people are using. They'll say, okay, let's say it's a video game. They'll say this section of the map was explored by 87% of people. This was explored by 1% of the people, and this other section over here, the east side or the north side, it's not really, nobody goes there. So let's not put any development in there, or let's put some secrets over there, and just mix it up, have fun. But if I'm surveying the people by their usage, what features do they want? What tools do they need? What magic enhancements they want in their weapons or their inventory?
So
Great.
with
Um,
So
all that you
here's
were,
here.
Jackson, may I?
Go ahead, Artie.
Um,
Please.
so with the way that video games are done these days, a lot of them do not. You have to have certain rules set in place if you're going to be gathering telemetry on the games as they run. And the stuff that you're describing, I'm sitting here like, okay, so that is why all these games have the achievement lists made public, so that these companies can say, hey, this is what people are doing.
don't give away our best secrets.
That's
it's just
smart. I
the
never even
connection
thought of
just,
that.
yeah,
The gamification works two ways.
yeah.
So I know what people are doing through analytics. I'll look at what people's behaviors are, what their interface with the system is, the performance of the systems, and I'll see what features I think as a company we need to offer, we need to improve, we need to fix, or we need to remove. Because if nobody goes to the Northlands, why would we have the Northlands? Let's just cut that out of the next update.
So I I l- I like that idea, and I also hate it. But the worst, like,
I love and hate it.
here's where I wanted to stop you earlier was you were saying that you're gonna make a focus group, right? And you're gonna have me, do whatever I'm doing, and then I have to give you feedback. Personally, as a user, I almost never give feedback because it's like takes my time, and unless it's something I really care about or it's like a feature that I really, really want, like I'm just gonna deal with it. And maybe that's probably I should probably just take the time to submit feedback. But the other thing is I often feel like my feedback is never heard. Like sometimes I have an idea for a really great feature for some piece of software. I'll even submit a request. I don't ever receive like a thank you, or I don't even receive like, oh,
Yeah.
we're gonna try and work on that. I don't get anything in return, and then unless I see that change happen at some point, then I don't think I'll ever submit another feedback request because it wasn't heard.
Well, that's your prerogative from a company perspective. That's your prerogative whether you want to give us information or not. But we'll take your request and we'll shuffle it into a pile with all the other very similar requests. And whichever ones have the most interest, that's what we're going to spend our time on.
So here's a story.
No, do
Um,
mine.
yeah. So way back in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was still much younger, as in Boy Scouts, our scout activity for that week is we had one of our leaders in our troop worked for WordPerfect. Remember WordPerfect? Jackson won't remember WordPerfect.
I used to own a copy of that.
So, do you remember when they came out and they're starting to push everything over towards GUI, graphical user interface, right? And then presentations came out. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So they started increasing. There's more than just word processing now. Now we're getting into a suite of applications, and so they had presentations, which was basically their PowerPoint equivalent, right? Well, the activity was to go tour the scout leader where he worked. He worked in the testing and usability department of WordPerfect, and he took us down to this studio room where they had a few computers set up, and they had like a camera. They had the two-way mirror, glass mirror thing, like you had an observation room and everything. And the idea was that a user would sit at the computer and they were instructed, like, you're going to be shown on a screen. There's a screen off to the side, and it's basically like create this figure or create this create this in your document, and you're talking through the steps that you're thinking about. I'm going to look for a tool that draws a box. I'm going to look for a way to change the color to green or whatever the color is. I'm going to look for a way to draw a triangle. It's just all the different, you talk through all your steps so they could analyze, is our software totally usable? Have we hit the mark, or is our software so confusing that, people can't find what they need to do very easily?
Now, was
Now,
that from a new user's perspective? Someone who's never used the software, they come in and then they try and
I
do
don't
something?
remember. I don't know, like, what kind of I would think that it was maybe more newer users to kind of start with a blank slate, just to look at the interface and say, okay, how intuitive is this for someone who's never used it before? Me being, into computers as long as I have, that would have factored in and they would have taken into account
Mm-hmm.
that. I'm
Right.
a computer user, so I kind of already have an idea of what I should be looking for. But
Mm-hmm.
even still, I'm sure they would take notes on that. And then as they're listening to me talk that through, they would say, oh, yeah, he's a semi-experienced computer user, or this person has absolutely no experience with computers at all. and they could weigh that, judge that different. I don't know, determine how they needed to write their documentation or
Mhm.
whatever. But the point I was getting at is that looking at the investment that company made to even design and have it in their facility, to have this studio set up with a control room and dual monitors and this and that, everything, the cameras and everything that was going on, obviously they were putting a great deal of emphasis on this matters to us. When our programmers program something, at the end of the day, it needs to make sense for the users. And I know, Jackson, you were getting back to the thing about like an Outlook, like would people even want this? And we've talked about features. Do people even want newer features? And that would have been an opportunity, like as a user sitting there, say, it'd be really, like if I was talking now, I'd say, it would be really nice if there was like a tool that did this, or if I could just
Mhm.
click on it and it would do this. Because then that would give them ideas that they hadn't thought of, or for feature sets and so on.
Hmm. And if I see a company doing that, I am very much more likely to spend money on that product and stick with them, even if there might be a slightly better option somewhere else. I'm more likely to stay with a company or a product where I know that they're listening.
Hmm.
And so I think that's something that uh, I wish we could see more often, because all we ever get is the feedback button that everyone hates, because all it is a text box that is never getting read.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see more companies designate. I mean, and maybe, I'm not a business owner, so I don't know, and maybe it's just completely, not very profitable. Although, I mean, you
But it's
get
not
my business.
it's not that it's not profitable, it's just not effective.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Right.
if I again, I'm putting the hat on as the corporate guy. If I had to make software work for everybody in all situations, you end up with WordPerfect. You end up with Microsoft Word. You end up with PowerPoint. You end up with all these programs. I mean, why does a word processor need to be anything more than about 20 megs in size? Have you installed Word lately? Check out how big that is.
Hmm.
There are so many features packed in because they're trying to appease everybody, say, okay, here's how you do that. Here's how you do that. Taking a new user and putting them in front of Excel, that's an adventure in pain,
Hmm.
especially if they're used to Google Sheets.
Mm,
You have to
true.
think different, but they put all those features in because somebody along the line said this would be a necessary tool. This is useful to me.
So at what point does your multi-tool become a piece of junk?
That's the
365.
question. 65. I'm
I'm,
going to
I'm,
go
I'm I'm sorry.
66.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna say 365 is just a bunch of programs that were overworked. They had a point where the Office suite, the they all functioned very well, and I'd say in the last 5-10 years they have lost functionality and gone more for gimmickry. You can disagree if
I
you
think
want.
they
You
I think
know,
it's not that they add gimmicks. I think they've run out of useful additions to the program.
That's
What else do you
gimmickry.
put in to make it better?
Jackson, I don't like multi-tool. That concept of it does the one application does everything I need. I hate that. And
Mhm.
Word is a good example because I see so many people using Word as a word processor. There is, to me, a very defined set of things that a word processor does, and there is a very defined set of things that a word processor is not meant to do. Word is a word processor, and a word processor is not a page layout program. There are applications out there that are made to be page layout programs. On the flip side, page layout programs are not made to be word processors, and I've seen people use page layout programs as word processors, and that's not the correct use. I remember back when I was first teaching Photoshop at my college as an adjunct faculty. I remember it happened actually a lot, even before I was teaching, even when I was just a lab assistant and helping students. And students often asked me, because I was a lab assistant for Photoshop, I was a lab assistant for Illustrator, I was a lab assistant for, at the time, we were actually teaching Quark Express, which was the page
Ooh,
layout.
that's going back in time.
That's going back in time, isn't it? But that's what we were teaching in our department at that point. It was before InDesign had really, was
That was before
good
it was a thing.
enough. It was before InDesign was good enough to be in the industry. But it was on its way. It was there. They always ask me, which do you like better? Which application do you like best? They're trying to get me to compare all three of them as though they're all apples, and they're not. I'm like, well, it depends. If I'm doing photo editing and touch-ups, or even if I want to just create an image with special effects and make it look cool, like bitmap editing, then I'm going to use Photoshop. If I'm creating logos and other similar types of vectored artwork, I'm going to use Illustrator. And if I'm doing page layouts for multiple page documents, I'm going to use Quark Express or Adobe InDesign or whatever it is that's the page layout program we're teaching at the time.
So, Mike,
like-
would you say that Adobe has done it right in that sense? Have they successfully separated their software into sets of different sized wrenches per se that do the one job?
It's
very
not
well?
different size wrenches though, Jackson. It's
There it's like-
a
right.
hammer and a wrench and a screwdriver.
Right.
Now,
Do you think that
Those
they've
are
done-
interchangeable.
Now here's the thing is you can use a wrench to pound on a nail. You can do that and you can have a degree of success with it. And I have seen students design their logos in Photoshop. And yes, you can do that, but that's not really the best use of that tool for what you're trying to achieve. And as far as Adobe, to be honest, I have not used the most recent Adobe products. I've been out of Adobe for like probably a good 8, 9, 10 years, really. So I can't say what has happened. I'm not familiar with what they've done with the software because I know that there's a lot of similar packages out there from other companies. And there has been a push to try to make sure that they can integrate with each other. Like I want to be able to take a logo and then maybe I'm working on it in the vector editing program. But for whatever reason, now I need to flip it over into the bitmap editor. So the photo processing program, or maybe then I need to send it to the page layout program. Now that's okay because there are times like, especially if it's in a page layout program and one of the elements is a logo, yes, I need to take that and go edit it in the vector program. Oh, now here's a picture of my family over here. I need to touch it up. I need to take it over to the bitmap editing program. As long as that's the purpose and we're doing that, that's fine. But to blur the lines to say, well, yeah, it does all this and so does this one and so does this one. The last time I used Adobe, as far as I could tell, they were still maintaining those boundaries. And it worked well. And the other programs that I've used since then, they still maintain those boundaries. And it works well.
Yeah.
Microsoft Word, I see so many people, because, everybody gets Office 365 or whatever it is installed on their computer because everybody has a Windows computer. So that's just the de facto, like, well, we need to have Word and we need to have Excel, and PowerPoint. And
bundle. You just take a bundle and you throw it at the computer.
Yeah.
And now,
and
boom,
so
I
then
don't care what your
Word is
job
what
is,
they
you've got
have,
plenty.
and Word has all the features. Like I can do headers, I can do footers, I can do page numbers, and then it turns into like I can do page layout. And there's people out there that have these fancy, elaborate, intricate, complicated templates that really is making Word behave like a page layout program. And when I try to go in, like Mike, this is broken. Like it's the text is all messed up. And I'm just like, it's because you're using Word as a page
Mhm.
layout program, and it's not meant to do that. The thing that they're trying to accomplish, it would take me probably an entire day to figure out how to do it in Word effectively. And in page layout program, I can have it done in probably 30 minutes,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and that's kind of the thing is that's what spawns so many different titles of software. That's what was brilliant back in the day is, and let's go back to the point from last week. If I've got a copy of Photoshop and I have to buy a copy of InDesign because my job requires it, now I'm spending money on two things. I buy
Mhm.
Photoshop for 600, I buy InDesign for 200, and I'm off to the races. And then Illustrator comes out. Okay, so now I need that too. So now we'll combine that into the package. So from the corporate side, from the Adobe side of things, I would see as the Adobe corporate guy, I would see there's lots of people that buy just ones and twos here and there. How about we put it together so that everybody has all the tools for one low price?
That is true. I mean, I would see, yeah, buying the titles individually definitely costs more than buying the bundle or the
Mhm.
or what ended up becoming Creative Suite. Okay. So, and then even that, Creative Suite was like, okay, Illustrator, InDesign, and Photoshop. Plus, we'll throw in some extras. You know, like here's some free fonts that you would
Here's
normally have to
Adobe.
pay $80 for. Here's some stock graphics that you would normally have to pay another $100 for, or whatever. And so they'll throw in
Acrobat.
some things to sweeten the deal and everything. But each of those programs do a very good job at what they do independently. I can
Mhm.
use InDesign, pay for InDesign, and if I really, really wanted to, go use GIMP as my photo editor and use Inkscape as my vector editor. And those are both free open source programs that you can download and freely use. And they can export into formats that can then be imported into InDesign and used in InDesign. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, but Adobe found that was what people were doing is they were finding alternatives to their software. So they invented Bridge, which links all the programs together into one seamless experience. So you can move
Mhm.
from one application to another, and
And it
it was
manages all your
great.
files.
It solved a lot of problems. I mean, let's put it back in a positive spin. It it solved a problem the market needed solved, and it used their own proprietary software to keep a closed ecosystem for that. So if I solve the problem, I make your life easier because you've got a common platform. You can install it across all the computers. We can install the software on your clients or your vendors or whoever. So now it's transportable between you and the people you interact with in a corporate setting, in a work setting. Um, that's valuable because I made your life easier, more effective, more efficient. So how about I take this instead of buyout? I'm going to put it on a subscription, cut the price down. So it'll take you 2 years to pay what I think it's worth. You're going to pay me a monthly fee. And so is everybody that you work with.
Yeah, as we've talked about it, I am more and more like okay with that model because I didn't ever think of the Adobe Suite because I I mean, I don't really use Adobe.
Now, I'm not trying to talk you into this, Jackson.
It's a
I'm trying to
No.
talk you out of this.
it's a convenience factor. It's really what
But
you're getting.
right, because I mean, when we talk about, I need all these different tools that do specific things well. I've always been a fan of that idea. I like to have specific tools for specific things, and that's all it does. I don't like multi-tools.
Hmm.
And so that is kind of siding with, okay, well, that's what Adobe is. We have all these different tools that do different things well. But what I dislike is that I probably only need 3 of Adobe's tools. They have like
Yep.
40. Um,
You got to
and
broaden your
whether
horizons, man.
whether or not I like it, I'm forced to buy all 40 and pay for them.
Yeah.
And so that is where I don't like that. And like you were saying, um, they have also solved that problem of, I was thinking about that when Mike was talking about it, is, oh, well, now I have to export my project here, edit it there, then re-export it, import the file here, and then I can, that's such a pain. And that's what makes the appeal for software that does it all. Even though, like Word, Word also tries sometimes to be an image editor, but it's
Oh
awful.
dear.
And so that's the thing. That's what draws people into that. And maybe it's cheaper. Yeah, I get to pay for one thing, but it doesn't really do anything super well.
So the
So
subscription model, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say. So that's my own dilemma I have in my head right now. Is what do I rather want to do? Personally, I'm probably the type of person, if I have the funds, I'm gonna spend them and get the right tools. I prefer to have a good tool to do the job.
And as long as I don't feel like that the company is trying to read my mind and think
Yeah.
of here's what you need. Here's the way the interface should be. Like I remember so many people, like even just using a social media example, Facebook. When I first started using Facebook, the appearance and structure of a Facebook web page changed like every 18 months, it seemed like. And everybody's like having to get used to the new interface. Like, why Facebook changed again? Like, really? Like, I was just getting used to the last change that they made, and now they've moved everything around again. And like, I don't know anybody that's ever complained about an interface. Like, everybody I've ever met is, you teach me how to do this. You tell me where the menu commands and everything are, and my process I'm supposed to follow. I will learn that and I will do it. And then the company upgrades the software and they change the interface. It's like, Mike, I know you taught me how to do this, but the menu command you taught me, it's not in the same place anymore. Where is it? Where did it go? And you change the interface or you change the way something's done. And I'm sure in some cases it probably is an underlying technical reason why that change had to be made, but it frustrates users that they feel like they have to relearn the program all over again just because of an interface change or a process change or something like that.
That was actually one of the main complaints against Office 2007 when that came out. Speaking of big bundles, or Windows 7 when it came out, when XP was doing just fine, is the interface just radically changed.
Remember
People
Windows
that are used
8?
to, yeah, that was fun.
Remember
Let's go back to tiles.
everybody got used to Windows 7 and then 8 came out and 8 was radically different. And I remember there were so many YouTube videos I saw where people were just bagging on it, just say 8 is garbage. Like, what was Microsoft thinking? And then think about 8, and then there was the small update. 8 was 8.1,
Yep.
8.1,
where
yeah.
they brought the start button back because so many people relied on that start button, and in 8 the start button went away and everybody's like, how do I do anything? There's
You
no
have to
start
swipe
button.
down from the top.
Nobody knew that. And so they had to bring it back because they realized it just crippled like 500,000 users just with that one change.
How to turn your desktop into a tablet experience without the touchscreen interface.
Well, let's give at least a little bit of props to Microsoft for the jump from 10 to 11. The interface is the exact same, pretty much.
No, it's not.
Well, just the fact that
Absolutely not.
From 8
I
to
would
10
say,
that they went back to what worked.
right.
Because they went 7 to 8, that was a disaster, and they realized their mistake. And then 8 to 10, you saw that, oh, now things are starting to look the way I remember it a little bit. This is more familiar now.
It feels
But
like
are
Windows
y'all
11. Go ahead.
go ahead.
From 10 to 11, it feels like I have been 10 feels like a custom convertible. You can do what you want, you can drive really fast, and 11 feels like a tricycle with training wheels. All the customizability has been taken away. And I'm looking at articles from, a couple years ago, and functions like, as a simple example, changing the size of the taskbar, just making it smaller, making it larger, depending upon how you want it. You can't
You
do
don't
that.
want to do that.
You can't do
You're not
that.
supposed to do that.
Mhm.
Even going into the registry editor and changing the values that are associated with that, don't change it. 2 years
Hmm.
ago, it did. So I
I
do
will
not
say the
feel that 11 is
customization
an
has
upgrade.
been
It's
the
it, it's
customization has been
So,
annoying.
so you
yeah,
never customized your tricycle? Is that what you're telling me?
not
I
after
put
the
bicycle
wreck.
cards in my tricycle wheels.
Okay, I'll give you that, the customization. But I'm thinking of just like, I mean, they didn't change. Okay, the one thing that I hated is like the centered bar. The first thing I do if I ever have like I'm on a Windows machine, and because I'm on a school campus, I'm always on a different Windows machine. The first thing I do is taskbar settings, left hand side. I hate the centered taskbar. So I mean, I at least for me, when I went from 10 to 11, it it looked different, but it didn't change the way I operated, and I appreciated that. I'll say, like whenever I right click on a file, I still get my options. Not all of them. They changed that. There are now less options. You can still get to the more options, but I don't have to do that very often, so it doesn't bother me that much.
It took me a few seconds to right click and figure out that the reason why there's no menu option for delete is because there's a little trash can icon in
I
that
hate those
menu.
icons.
Like
I prefer my line items.
I'm reading lines looking for my option, and all the time it's been this little icon up there. Oh, there's a trash can.
Mhm.
That's the delete. That's how I delete the file with the right click.
All right,
Oh,
I
corporate
will
overload
say
here. I'm going to tell you why we did that.
why? You don't
Because I
want me to
don't
delete
have
my
to do a
files.
language pack.
Well,
I have an icon. I don't have to rename it for every, what is it, 179 languages?
Lazy.
Yeah.
well,
but
okay,
you
now
already have,
let
you've already
me complain
developed your
about something.
language packs. I
Then
don't,
explain to me this. Why can you not unround the corners on Windows?
You're not
Why does
supposed to. They're supposed to be cornered with a radius. No, it's one of those things. You've got to put a style to your product, guys. If it doesn't have a look, a feel, a pizzazz, I mean, let's take variants of Linux. It won't take you long sitting down to tell the difference between, say, Kali Linux and Ubuntu, or Ubuntu. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it. I'm pronouncing it wrong. There,
Ubuntu.
I'm pronouncing it wrong on purpose. You're
Now you
welcome.
can say it however you want.
You can quickly deduce which platform you're on based on the way the windows snap, the way the toolbars are arranged, and that's brand identity. So by rounding the corners, it gets better
Apple.
theoretically.
they
Yep.
already
Apple
had
around the
brand
corners.
identity, and they have butchered it every single chance they get, in my opinion.
Well, there's a fine line between innovation and stagnation. If you keep it the same for too long, people get bored.
And to be fair, with Linux, it depends on what desktop manager you're using, because you can
That's
have
true.
the same underlying operating system but different desktop managers. Are you using GNOME? Are you using, you know, there's a good half dozen of them out there,
Oh yeah.
and people pick their flavor and what they like, and they customize the crud out of it and make it look exactly the way they want.
And that's the power of Linux is you can actually get in
Yeah.
and tinker with it. But that's the antithesis of corporate efficiency. I want to set my teammate down, my crewman down, and say, your job is X, Y, and Z. Here's the system. Here's the training manual. Go forth and do. And so you can't cookie cutter it if it requires a lot of, or even allows a lot of customization. It's where Apple
It's
got famous, is it allowed a lot of customization early on things that looked and felt great to modify.
well,
I cut you off already. Go for it.
we are nearing the end of our time.
Wow, you are right.
Aw.
Well, I wanna give a foreshadow, guys. Next week, I want to talk about AI and this disruptive DeepSeek that just came out. Now, a lot of people played with it. I even saw something on Dave's Garage of him playing with the offline version.
I'm actually looking at that in my list right now. I need to
Nice.
watch that still. Yeah.
It's a good read. Yeah, read the video.
So give me like I haven't even heard of DeepSeek. What's like a 10-second synopsis? What is it? What does it do?
Ooh, Mike, rock, paper, scissors. You and me.
You.
Who gets to tell him?
You.
DeepSeek is a ChatGPT equivalent written by a Chinese firm that took 2 months and $6 million compared to the 3 years and $100 million that OpenAI spent.
And
So it is the Pinto that's outperforming a Lamborghini.
and by outperforming, it takes approximately 3% of the same resources to spit out the same answer.
Really? Is this
It is super efficient, super lightweight. It's a game changer. This I think also goes hand in hand with our conversation of the encrapification. There's a more colorful word for it. I'm not going to use that. It's a family show. Encrapification, where people get stagnant and stuck in their ways. They don't want to innovate. They just sit there and say, this is good enough. And they say, okay, for us to hit the next innovation, I need 20 times what you gave me last time. So, hey, boss, go buy me 20 times the number of servers you got me last time, and I'll make you something twice as good.
Mhm.
China just ate our lunch. They just did it with a glorified Etch-a-Sketch. That's not fair, but
They did a
they did it with,
MacGyver.
yeah, $6 million in 2 months. Now, okay, let's be fair. They had the blueprint in front of them. They saw other companies doing this. There was a lot of research that they could just pull off the interwebs and say, hey, this is how it's done. And you just put a little creativity to it. So I think it's a good thing because it gave everybody a kick in their complacency. We're no longer stuck in this paradigm of throw more money at it, throw more compute power at it, and then it's better. Saying, no, let's rewrite the code. Let's make it more efficient.
Very
Well-
cool. Well, I'll have to do some research on it for next week.
I'm hoping to get my hands on an offline version so it's not in the cloud.
It's pretty big.
How big?
What's the size, Artie? I think you got the closest to it.
Approximately 167 files that are close to 5 gigs each.
Oh.
And then you need to get a compiler or an interface for it. But that can be from lots of places.
Okay, now here's the joke. That one's smaller and lighter weight than GPT.
So we're looking at what? 500 gig?
Closer to 900.
900.
Nice. Well, tune in next time, everybody. We're going to talk about DeepSeek. We're going to talk GPT. We're going to talk all of those other ones. The one that I loved was Minstrel 8. It was 8 experts. Anyways, until then, I'm John.
I'm Mike.
I'm Jackson.
I'm Artie, and this has been Close Encounters of the Tech Kind.
Have a good night, everybody.